Be seated. So a couple weeks ago, Pastor Kurtz came up to me and he was like, hey, in a couple weeks we're having the sermon series, or we're ending the sermon series, and the sermon is called Feasting on the Presence of God. Would you be interested in giving the last part of the message? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Awesome, nobody ever lets me talk. He was like, you got 10 minutes. Well, I know you want to beat the Baptist to the Golden Corral, so I'll try to get you out of here on time. Speaking of the Golden Corral, I want to tell you a story about a family who goes to an all-you-can-eat buffet. And the whole family comes in the front door. The hostess greets them. It's a very nice greeting. Takes them in, shows them where to sit, gets them their drinks, and the family just sits there. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? So, I mean, they can get up at any point and just go eat, right? But they just sit there. And they sit there. And they sit there. And never once get up to go eat, and they never once take a drink. Hold on to that story because we're going to come back to it. So when I'm talking about worship, feasting on the presence of God, I was like, I wonder what the writers of the New Testament, I wonder what they really meant by worship when they wrote about worship, right? So I went back to the original Greek, and I'm only going to tell you one word. There's several words for worship that they use, but the most common one in the New Testament is called, it's proskuneo, and I probably butchered that word because I'm not Greek, but say it like you mean it, right? Proskuneo. It originally carried with it the idea of falling before a king and kissing the ground before his feet, or kissing his feet. That's what the most common word for worship in the New Testament, that's what they're talking about, okay? That's what we're supposed to be doing when we come here. Falling before the feet of Jesus and kissing his feet. But how many of us come here expecting our feet to be kissed? How many of us come here and say, hey, look at me. I'm here. I made it to church. Aren't I a good person? Look at me. Look at me. How many of us do that? Even if we don't mean it, we sometimes do it. We're supposed to be feasting on the presence of God, not searching for people to worship us or kiss our feet, right? I've heard people say, Pastor, I came to your church service and I just want to tell you, we're not coming back. We're leaving. I'm sure this has never happened to Tony, but other pastors have said that, right? And he says, why? Why what happened? Oh my gosh, what can I do for you? Why are you leaving? And they're like, well, I wasn't being fed. Remember the family that went to the Golden Corral and didn't eat? They left the restaurant and they never got fed at an all-you-can-eat buffet. How many times do we come to church and leave and say, Pastor, you didn't feed me. Worship leader, you didn't feed me with the songs you were playing. So I'm leaving. I'm not coming back. Would you go to the Golden Corral, have lunch, except not have lunch, right? Not eat anything, leave, call the manager and say, you didn't feed me, so I'm never coming back. It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't do that. That's ludicrous. But we do it to the church all the time. Do you expect Pastor Tony or anybody else, Sunday school leaders, anybody, do you expect those people to meet all of your spiritual needs 1 hour a week? Is that a reasonable expectation? I don't think so. We average close to 500 people on Sunday morning alone. That's just people who average come, they're people that come and go, aren't here one week, are here the next week. They're probably, I don't know this number, but there's probably over 700 people just on the membership rolls alone. How in the world can one person meet the spiritual needs of all those people 1 hour a week? Who has the power over your worship? Do you give it to Tony? Do you give it to me? Do you give it to the band? Do you give it to anybody else in this room? Who has the power over your worship? Who's stopping you from worship? Who's telling you that you can worship? Because I don't want that power. I know Tony doesn't want it. We create the environment for you to come and experience God, but it's on you to actually open yourself up and say, God, I'm giving myself to you today. If you leave and you're like, that pastor didn't say hell enough in the message. Or, I wish they would have played my favorite song. I just didn't feel like I connected in worship today. You're giving somebody else the power over your worship. If your worship is based on what the topic of the sermon is or what songs we play, you're going to be let down a lot. And my question to you is, do you want to get before God and say, God, I would have worshiped you more if they played the right songs? Is that really what you want to say to God? I would have worshiped you more if the pastor would have preached on the topics that I wanted to hear about. I hope not. Who has the power over your worship? Because you shouldn't be giving that power to anybody else. I want to read a quote to you. I like to read books about worship. Worship's kind of what I do, right? So I like to read books about it. I like to educate myself about worship. And I came across this quote that I just thought was incredibly wise. And I want to share this with you. It says, worship is a matter of preference and deference. Sometimes I get to sing my preferences, enjoying the songs, styles, and sounds of music that resonate with my cultural place. Other times I defer to others in my church family, joining my voice with their choice of music. Grace makes that deference joyful. As I join my voice with the diverse community of faith around me, I also join my voice with the saints from all the past 2,000 years. Together we sing and shout, we teach and admonish, and experience the rich dwelling of God's indwelling word. We sing with grace, and we sing because of grace. Can I get an amen? We sing because of grace. We wouldn't even be able to sing to God if it wasn't for Jesus. Yet we show up here to worship him, and we act like we're going through the drive-thru at McDonald's, Like, yeah, I'd like a little bit of how great thou art with a little extra how great is our God, right, on the side. And then when we don't get it, we want to pull through the drive-thru and talk to the manager. You know what I mean? That's crazy. This time is so much more than that. It's more than the music. It's more than any one person here. Do you want to stand before God and tell him that you let other things distract you from worshiping? I hope not. You're at an all-you-can-eat buffet right now. Everything that you need is here right now in the presence of God. Are you listening? Because he's talking to you. He's speaking to you right now. Are you ready to hear him? He just wants to know you. He just wants to love you. He just wants to be with you. Let's not make idols out of other things like music or people in the church and elevate them above God. He wants so much more for us. We're going to be taking communion just a moment. This is a very real, symbolic way for us to feast on the presence of God. As we eat the bread and we drink the juice, we remember what Jesus did for us on the cross, the sacrifice that God made to send his one and only perfect Son to die in your place, just so he could know you. The American church, there's no secret, it's in decline. Churches in other parts of the world, they worship underground. They worship in secrecy because the authorities there would kill them. But they're not letting that stop them. If I told you next week there was a possibility in worship that somebody would come through that door and round your family up and haul you off to a prison somewhere, would you come to worship next week? Probably not. What's distracting you from worship? How far are you willing to go to give God what he deserves? You have the opportunity today to worship him with all that you are, with all that you have. What's holding you back? Feast on the presence of God. I'd like to invite Peter to come back up. We're going to be serving communion. And I pray that this time you wouldn't just go through the motions, that you wouldn't just eat the bread and drink the juice and go on about your day, but you would take the time to reflect about what Jesus has done for you. And reflect on the fact that God loves you more than you could ever imagine. And he wants to be with you in a very real way right here, right now.